Hey there, everybody. I'm Mr. Remedies. You are my fantastic fourth graders all across Copper's Cove, and we made it to a Friday. Oh, yeah. Unless, of course, you're watching this on a Saturday, then, man, you're working on a Saturday. But we'll make it happen either way. All right. In today's lesson, we are continuing our study on biographies and looking at the craft of writing biographies. So let's dive into today's lesson. Today's lesson is titled Biographers Include Details About Society and Culture. Let's move on to those all important learning goals and success criteria. And let's do that now. We are learning to understand that biographers include details about the society and culture in which the time that the subject lived in. Okay, remember that the subject is the person that the biography is about. Okay, some success criteria for you today. I can define the word biographer. I can define society. I can define culture. I can use terms like significance and time period correctly. Okay, you do all those correctly, we'll be right on track to really understanding our big goal today. Okay? Let's look at a couple of those very important definitions. Three definitions for you today that we really need to be focused on. I can define biographer. So a biographer, as we defined previously, is an author that writes a biography. Society, we're going to be talking a lot about society today. Society is the whole group of people interacting together. Okay. And culture is the way a group of people do things. It includes food, language, clothing, art, music, and customs and beliefs. So you can think of it as society is the big group of everybody. Culture are the little groups of people and how they do things. Okay, and how they do things. All right. It is very important that you understand what these words mean as we talk about this, because this is the meat on the bones for what we're going to be discussing today. So let's move on to some of those examples. So we're trying to practice recognizing the details of the time period and using these to help us discover and understand really how these contribute to the importance of the story and the biography itself. So our first example comes from there on your screen, The Secret Kingdom, Nek Chand, A Changing India, and a Hidden World of Art. Okay, if you think back to this book, it was in our yesterday's mini lesson assignment as part of a read aloud. He is an artist that makes a rock garden after leaving his home. So we're going to ask ourselves a couple of questions. Like, what time period did Nek Chand live? Okay, now time period is very important for us to understand, and we'll see why in just one moment. Okay, if you think back, he lived in 1947 and afterwards. Okay. The second question we're going to ask is, why is it important that the biographer included details of the society and culture of India and Pakistan in 1947? All right. That's a big old question. I lost my breath saying that question, but why is it important that the author tells us details about the society and the culture of this time? What was going on during this time that maybe makes this important for the life of Nek Chand? Okay? We know that in 1947, India and Pakistan were split into two countries, so Nek had to leave his home. And these memories of his previous home help inspire him to make the rock garden that he's invested a lot of time in and is very passionate about. So knowing that that split happens in 1947 is incredibly important to understanding why Nek Chand's life was important and why that the author wanted to write a story about him, wanted to write his biography. Okay. So let's look at another one. We're talking about our girl, Bessie Coleman, on example number 2. Right? What time period? Again, we're really got to talk about time period. What time period did Bessie Coleman live? Early on, it says that she lived in the early 1900s. So Bessie Coleman lived, if my math's correct, she lived 100 years ago. That's a long time ago. And we've changed quite a bit. Things have changed quite a bit. So, but I'm still going to ask myself, Why is it important that the biographer included details of the society and culture of America in the 1900s? Okay, in the early 1900s, especially. So there you see on your screen, in the early 1900s, women and African Americans did not fly planes in those days. That was just something that they did not have the opportunity to do. Okay, it was not something that they were able to do at that time for a number of different reasons. Okay, and because that wasn't done before, because women and African Americans didn't fly planes at that time, Bessie becomes the very first African American to get a pilot's license. So we see here that she has done something that no one else had done before in the entirety of human history. Bessie Coleman was what we call a trailblazer, a pioneer. Okay. So it's important that we understand the details of the time period. It's important that the biographer tells us those details so we can really understand the significance of these details and the significance of the biography itself. Okay? Let's keep going. So I'm going to ask myself the overall general question. I'm not asking myself, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the details and using those details to help me understand the subject's life better. Okay? Because if I look at those details, it's going to help me understand life better, because the subject becomes the first person to ever do something, like Bessie Coleman, or any number of the many inventors that we like to read about. Right? If I know the details of the society and culture of that time, then I know that the person I'm reading about may become the first person to ever do something. That's amazing. That is awesome. That is something that deserves significance and respect. That's amazing. Right? Looking at the details helps us understand the subject's life better, because the events of the time inspire and motivate the subject, like Nick Chan. Right? I'm willing to bet that he probably doesn't make his rock garden if he doesn't start to miss his home. Right? And he doesn't start to miss his home unless Pakistan and India were split into two separate countries. Right? So we see here that knowing what happens from a historical standpoint can help us understand the subject's life better, because it motivates them. Okay? They're reacting to those events in that situation and that society. Right? Also, a little bonus content for you. Looking at the details helps us understand the subject's life better, because the subject's life was unique for the time. In this case, we're going to talk a little bit about Frida Kahlo. As discussed in yesterday, she was an incredibly interesting artist and an interesting person, because the art she created was very unique for the time. And the ideas and the lifestyle she led and some of the wonderful things she did was very unique for the time. Okay. But we don't know it's unique for the time unless the author gives us details about society and culture of that time. Okay. So those are three main ways that understanding the details of a time period helps us understand the subject's life better. Okay. And by all means, we need to really understand that the author has to do this. They have to include these details in order for us to really understand the subject's life, to understand that person's significance, and to really get enjoyment and to get benefit from reading the biography in the first place. All right, let's go on to a review. Back on your screen here, voila. As a review, biographers include details about the society and time period in which the subject lived in order to help us understand the significance of the subject's life. Okay, if they do not include the details about society and culture, then the biography is going to be very boring. It is going to be less effective in really telling you how important this person was or how much of an impact they led. And it's probably going to lessen your motivation or the inspiration that person may provide you. Okay? Understanding the time period of a biography is super important because man, it's kind of how and why the person is important and worthy of a biography being written by them in the first place. So, doing this, understanding that the authors have to do this, muy importante for you guys. All right, that is our lesson on details and time periods when it comes to biographies. As always, you know who I am. I'm Mr. Remedies. You guys are awesome, and we will see you on Monday.